The Notorious MOMZ, the podcast! Woo!
She needs the mic.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You just didn't pass the mic, not big surprise.
Okay. Hi everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you Yuri for having me. This is my first ever live podcast, so I'm super excited. The comedy before me, I don't know how I'm gonna beat it because this topic is a little it's a little heavy, but it's something that I have actually been going through and on my journey. And I found the topic and I was just like, I think that this is something that needs to be spoken about because in our culture, I'm Hispanic, Puerto Rican. In our culture, we don't really talk about these kind of things, right? So the topic is the mother wound. I don't know if anybody has heard of it, but it's a intergenerational childhood trauma that's passed on from mother to daughter. And it comes in like different kind of forms. It affects you in different kind of ways. It causes like deep-rooted attachment issues, relationship issues, a whole bunch of other stuff. But I have my guests, Daisy and Amanda, and that's what we're gonna be chatting about today. So, how y'all doing? Thank y'all for coming. Thank you for having us. Like I said, this topic is a little deep. It's not funny. It's not comedic. But I think it's important to bring awareness. So, like I was saying, the mother wound, I was actually scrolling on Instagram and I found it. There's a site, I'm not sure, I forget what it's called, but it talked about, your mother having this kind of trauma that affects only the daughters, right? And it affects women of color. It affects women that are living in poverty. It affects women that are, immigrants or that have migrated from other countries. And, as I was reading, I'm like, I wonder why, this affects our culture specifically, right? Because we are women of color, and Hispanic women, of course, I don't know about anybody else's mama, but my mama got trauma. And I actually do feel like it has been passed down to myself. But how do you guys feel about that? Like, I know Daisy's mom is no longer with us, but Amanda's mom is. But you guys can speak to the point of like, with your parents or with your mom specifically, like, have you seen that growing up? Like those little bits and pieces of traumatic experiences that you can identify?
My mom's mom was never really all that affectionate with her children. So the benefit of that was that my mom turned that around because she was, a little more affectionate with us. At the same time, her mother also wasn't there for her as much. And that kind of like, my mom wasn't there for us as much as we needed her to be.
Right.
She was present, yes. She told us what to do, yes. But there were certain things we weren't able to talk to her about. Like we should have been able to go to her about boys and sex and, things like that. And it was kind of shunned, so she became a little bit judgmental of those things and we shouldn't do that because God doesn't like that. And, it was more of a religious upbringing than anything else. But in turn, I think us as mothers, her daughters, we always used to say, I don't want to be like mom.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like mom. So, and I know, and to say that mother wound gets transferred to the daughter, it gets transferred to the sons too.
Yes.
I feel like, sons also carry that, the way that their mother was with them.
Right.
And they learn how to, treat their children or treat their wives or daughters through that. And I see like, how my brother is with the women in his life, and then I see my son through whatever, because I know I've bestowed trauma upon my own children, myself, because we're never perfect as mothers.
Right.
I see how they are, and you know, you learn. You try to be different if you're aware of those things, but you just try to make things a little bit different. But yeah.
Maybe. Well, feeding off of what she stated about the affection, that was also, my mother showed affection, but in different ways. It wasn't the hugs and the kisses. It was, here's something I bought for you, or here's something I made for you. Her mom was not as affectionate either, but I saw affection in her for her grandkids. So it may have skipped, like giving it to the kid, but then for the grandkid, it was there. But we still grew up with not as much affection. So when I had my boys, I was always snuggling them and hugging them and kissing them and I love you. So my boys are affectionate, or at least more so than what we were taught. I also saw my mom was a young mom, so she had to grow up fast. For us, I also saw that she allowed us to be kids to a certain extent. So she didn't force certain things on us. Was she strict? Very much so, because her mom was strict with her. But my mom was a young mom. She was married young. She had all three of her kids young. But because of what I saw with her, I refused to be a young mom, married young. So I was in my 20s when I had my first son. But with all of that, I also appreciate what I was installed as a Latina, Puerto Rican. Like, I appreciate this being strict, because the presentation that I have now is because of what she installed in me and what her mom installed in her. So it's like my mom had her womb, but she didn't have as much that she passed on to us. So yeah, we do have certain, I would say, issues, but not to the certain extent that I hear some other children going through with their mom, or what their experiences are. I think about, like, thinking about what both of you guys were saying, and it's like, I wonder why, sex or these types of things were never spoken about. Y'all were having sex.
No.
Y'all were having a lot of sex.
Mommy had 5 kids.
I
There
mean,
was no TV.
Like my dad, there's 16 of them on my dad's side, and there's 12 of them on my mother's side. Like, I come from a very, very large family. Like, and it's just like, why? Like, I always wonder, right? Hindsight is 20/20. You think about it when you're an adult, it's like, hey, why couldn't we talk about these things? Y'all were bumping and grinding.
Right?
Like, I don't understand why this was such an issue, because in a lot of, like, our families, especially, like, Hispanic families, sex is one of those things. It's like, oh, you can't talk about that. And when you come from, like, when you bring religion into the mix, because my family was also very Catholic. We didn't practice. I don't practice, but I do believe in God and stuff. But it talks about sex in the Bible, and it talks about prostitutes in the Bible, and it talks about all of that shit. So I think about that sometimes, like, as an adult going back, I'm like, I don't understand why this was so hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I digress because I'm going off the topic. But it's just like, that's kind of one of those things for me that it's just like we never talked about, why sex is so amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about anybody else, but if you're doing it, it could be a wonderful experience.
Exactly.
Sometimes they ain't gonna be they gonna be so many wonderful experiences, right? But like, I have, my son is 19, and we never really got into that real, the birds and the bees, but like, we've spoken about, like, hey, this is what you do. He has a girlfriend, and I'm like, he's very, very open. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, that's just a little bit too much. I understand, like, we have that type of relationship, but keep that for, those are conversations for, like, you and your friends. And like with the religion, it's like, oh, you had to go to church, like, you had to get your kids baptized and all that stuff anyway. But I feel like, for like me and my experience with my mom, I feel like what I saw growing up, first of all, both of my parents worked like endlessly. They were always working, they were never home. And I understand now it was to provide a home that they didn't have, because both of my parents, you know, I'm very proud of them. I love them both very much, but you know, they grew up in poverty. You know, my dad has like an 8th grade education, but he's the smartest man you'll ever know. I don't care what nobody says. He's taught me a lot of things.
That's right.
Right. You know, because they have to go to work. So it's kind of like one of those things. And, you know, right now with the journey that I'm on with my mom, first of all, I'll give y'all a little tip that I haven't spoken to my mother in 2 months. My mother's alive, but I haven't spoken to her in a very long time. Because of the fact that I feel like I have been experiencing this mother wound for much more time than I would like. You know, and as I kept reading and kept researching, I'm like, yeah, this is me. You know, one of the things that they spoke about is a defense mechanism called fawning. So fawning is basically your defense as a child to want to always appease to your mom, always want to make her happy, always want to be of service. And then it's never reciprocated and it's never enough. But for you as that little child in you, you know, you always want to make your parents happy, right? Because if you think about, you know, the dynamic between kids and their parents, it's like, okay, I do good, I get good things. You know, I do good in school, you know, I get good things. So it's kind of like, it's that. So when I read about fawning, I looked at myself very, very, very deeply in the mirror, and I'm like, hey, that is me, right? Because the dynamic that I have between my mom and I, my mom was kind of like yours. Like, she loved with gifts. The bigger the gift, the more the love. You know, the more expensive the gift, the more she felt like, hey, I love you. I love you this much because this costs this much, right? And as I'm getting older, it's like, hey, you know, we've had a lot of disagreements, and that's not right, you know, in my opinion. Like, that's not, I think love is an emotion, and it should be organic. You shouldn't have to buy anybody's love. Right? You shouldn't have to be like, and I don't feel like you have to put a price on it. But I think that in some situations, you get to that point where it's just like, okay, like, are you doing this because you love me? Or are you doing this because you want me to accept you? You know, because I feel like our parents carry their own trauma. I think we just talked about that. You know what I mean? Because I look at how my grandmother was. First of all, I never liked my grandmother. I'm sorry for the people that really love their grandparents. Unfortunately, I did not. I was not able to have that relationship. First of all, my grandparents on my father's side, they died when I was very, very young. And I never really liked my grandmother because she was very mean. She was not very nice. So I never got that grandparent experience that I hear a lot of people talk about. Like, you talk about your grandma and it's like, oh, my grandmother was like the best. And I'll be like, damn, I don't know what that feels like. Because my grandmother was a bitch. No offense. Like, she really was. I hope my mom is watching right now. But anyway, so as far as like your mom and how you've seen bits and pieces of trauma, do you feel like maybe now or sometime back then you would ever want to like address that with them, or you know, because sometimes we want to say things to our parents and we really can't?
Yeah.
With the way my mom was raised, I felt comfortable sitting with my mom. After a certain age, as long as I was open and honest with her, we had she gave me more trust. Even to the day she passed away. She would sit down with me, we would talk, she would listen, and I do appreciate that. She appreciated me as an adult, as a mom. In my relationship, she never got involved. So, I thought she would, but she didn't, which was, I feel like my mom, based on how she, what she went through as a child, she tried to fix certain things with her kids. Well, in my experience, I can't speak for my siblings. In my experience, I was comfortable with my mom. If I cut a class from school, I would be like, hey mom, cut class today. And she would just be like, okay, but don't do it again. If I was gonna hang out, as long as I told her I was gonna hang out, she was okay with it. So it's like, I feel like with her, I don't feel like she really had issues, but she tried to reverse the dynamic with her kids so we wouldn't experience the same thing. She did have, her way of giving affection, which to this day I miss. It was calling me in the morning for my birthday or cooking my favorite meal for my birthday. Like, she was there to acknowledge. She was there for everything for me. Would I have wanted more as an adult, as a mom of an adult child now? Yes. Do I appreciate everything she did? My mom died young, so I was 29, she was 49, so I really didn't get to sit down, with her to have these discussions. Because in your 20s, you're not worried about that. So it's like, maybe now, probably, I would have loved to sit down and discuss her youth and her trauma, but, it's unfortunate I can't. But she is like, I can't explain, but she was there when she needed to be there. But again, would I want it more? Yeah, sure.
I think now, as an adult, I can speak to my mom a lot more about like my relationships. Like I said, we couldn't go to her for, anything without being, that's not good, X, Y, and Z. And now, we kind of make her aware, Ma, you're being judgmental. Like, don't do that. And the last thing she wants to do as a Christian woman is be looked at as a judgmental person. So she'll pause and she'll be like, okay, But like now I go to her for like relationship advice and stuff like that because Mom has been through it. She was married prior to my dad, and then she's been with my dad for like 45 years. You know what I mean? And my mom has been through hell with my dad. And she's always been like very faithful, very loyal, very consistent, until she was just like, she had a breaking point, and I see that in her, the wisdom that she has because of all that she's been through with her parents. Her dad wasn't around all the time because he was a merchant marine. He was always out, and then her mom, you clean the house, I go out, and y'all are supposed to do this, X, Y, and Z. She was different with us, and I see everything that from what she's told us, the things that she's told us, I see her being different from what she's had. I can go to her now, be more open with her now as an adult than what I was as a kid. I wish I could go to her as a child, when I was a child. And I never wanted that for my kids. I never wanted my kids to feel how I felt, because I felt like I couldn't go to my parents. So, my kid is in the audience right now. He's 20 years old, and he...
Shout out to Isaiah.
Hey, baby boy. Mommy loves you. But, I always told him, you could tell me I'm wrong, respectfully, because you want to keep your teeth. You can tell me I'm wrong. Because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm your mother, but I'm not perfect. Let me know. And we've had a very open relationships, and I'm sure that there's some things that he hasn't said to me. There's some things that he hasn't told mommy. And that's okay. I got my secrets too. It's okay. But for the most part, he'd be like, nah, you're not right for that, Mom. You're not right for that. And I'm okay with that, because our children are our biggest teachers. Like, they're closer to, and it's my spiritual belief too, but they're closer to the ethers than we are right now because they just came from that realm, and they could teach us so much more as children than we can as adults, because we forget as we go along, but they remember, and they're always going to remember. you know, how we've treated them, and then their children are always going to remember, and so on and so forth, you know, but.
Oh my God, I love that you say that because, so I have 2 kids. I have an 18-year-old and a 3-year-old. So my 18-year-old, we grew up together. I say that all the time, and I know I made a lot of mistakes. But with my 3-year-old, so she's gonna be 4, I'm doing a little bit of gentle parenting. I don't know if anybody's heard about that. So gentle, no, yes, exactly. Don't judge me, because gentle parenting is not the Latino culture, right? So if anybody doesn't know what gentle parenting is, in my head, I'm just gonna say my definition. It's kind of like being a little bit more, you know, soft. No hitting, because I don't know about anybody else, but I used to get my ass whooped because I was very, I don't know about anybody else out there, but I used to get my ass whooped because I was very sassy, and I was very like, you know, it has to be like my way or whatever. And my daughter's the same way, very much so, just like me. So I have a hard time with that, but you know, to speak to what you said, like, I noticed that, and this is something that my husband has taught me too, is that giving her explanations helps the situation, because she's very curious. So she always wants to know, like, hey, why is this like this? Why is this like that? And I know, like, it takes so much time, because back in the days when I know when I used to ask, oh, because I said so, just do it.
I'm guilty of that.
Just do it.
I'm guilty.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, but why? I don't care, just do it. And it's just like, shit, like, so I think about those times and I'm like, so here I am explaining to a 3-year-old why, whatever the case, and I find myself doing a lot of explaining, right? So that's where we at with it. But I do wish that, you know, my parents would have explained a lot of things to me, because I feel like because I didn't get a lot of like explanations, I could have probably done things different. Right? You know what I mean? Like, I think that if I would have had a little bit more, I wouldn't say like a little bit more care, but a little bit more attention, right? Because I was the baby, and you know, my parents were always working, like I said. So I feel like that attention was like needed, right? And then sometimes like I have to catch myself, because like I said, I'm on this like journey. I'm like on this self-discovery. Like, I'm trying to figure out my life, basically trying to figure out my shit. And it's just like, I noticed like when I would get home, it's like after working a long ass day, I would get home and it's just like, okay, I have this toddler. I just want to sit on my phone. And I would just be sitting on my phone, scrolling through Instagram. And I'm just like, you know, my husband was there because, you know, I got home from work or whatever. And then I'm just like, all right, I'm done with this day. But now, like, I'm starting to learn, like, she needs attention, because when I get home, it's like she's asking me all these questions, and we're like, okay, how's your day? So I'm becoming less of my mother, because my mother was very much like that, and more of, like, the mother that I want to become, right? Because you are so right. Our kids teach us things that sometimes it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know, you know what I mean? How beautiful parenting could be the second time around. For me, that's how I'm feeling.
I'm guilty. My oldest is 24. So with my mom, she was strict to a lot of extent. And I feel like I did that with my oldest. Like, he will look at me with my youngest and be like, well, if that was me, I would have gotten slapped for that. And I'm just like, again, like you. I was 23 when I had him. So it's like, yeah, we kind of grew up. I made my mistakes with him. Could I have toned it down? Definitely. But it was the way that I was raised as well. It's like, don't question nothing. You know, I got my little belt, got the extension cord, the hanger, you name it, I got it. So with him, as a single mom, you know, my mentality was like, I'm doing this by myself. I have a boy. I have to prove to people that I can do this. So my son was a presentation of, he's gonna be walking straight, he's not gonna look left, like military type, you know? So, could I have done things different? Definitely. Do I regret some of the things that I did? Yes. But as a 24-year-old, he doesn't rely on mommy. He's been away from me since he was 20. He's never called me and said, mommy, I need. Of course, I'll be there for him if he needs, but and I'm like, you know, it may have not been the way he wanted it, but I'm very, very proud of the man that he is today. Now with my youngest, I honed it down with him, But I always be like, when he get a little sassy, I'd be like, you want to call your older brother and ask him? Because I don't know.
The babies don't be getting ass whoopings. Why is that?
When you have the second, we don't want to beat our kids, I guess.
Isaiah, I always say he was the bump around kid. I'm sorry, babe. He was the bump around kid, and he's my oldest, you know. And then I have a daughter and a son that's younger than him, and he's like, ooh, if I would have did that, I would have got my butt whipped. I'm gonna tell mommy, you know, like, cause I treat just like you,
right.
the oldest, and he's still respectful to this day, you know, like. People always compliment. He's so respectful. He better be.
Yeah, no, they say the same thing. Yuri, how much time I have?
You still got 5 more minutes.
All right, I got 5 more minutes. We're gonna wrap this up. So in essence, I hope everyone has enjoyed this little talk. I think it was like therapeutic. I don't know, it was therapeutic for me to like be here and talk about this. So, you know, I think that healing the mother wound is really important. So, you know, this wasn't, because, you know, when I asked people to come on the show, they were like, oh, you know, I don't want to go there bashing my mom. It was never going to be like a bashing session, right? It's more like to bring awareness to the things that we have been through as children and don't want to continue to perpetuate this generational trauma. I know we hear about that a lot, but it's true. You know, when you're young, you don't think about it, but then you get older and you start looking at things that have happened in the past, and it's like, hey, that wasn't right.
Right.
That wasn't cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something that I would have been comfortable. But what the hell did we know? We were kids being raised in, you know, in the whirlwind. But I say all that to say, anyway, love on your moms. You know,
Yes.
we're all moms. Love on them. Love on each other, because this world is really fucked up and it's very cruel. And that's it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.